My name is Olivia Wren, and for years, I thought being the reliable one would be enough. The dependable daughter. The quiet fixer. The girl who paid bills no one remembered owing. I never asked for much. Just a little recognition. Maybe a seat at the table. But in my family, silence wasn't golden. It was currency. And I was the ATM. The last time I saw my car, it was parked in our driveway, still warm from my morning commute. 2 days later, I saw it again, on my sister's Instagram story. Savannah, beaming, perched on the hood like she owned it. The caption read, "Step 1, grease, baby. Thanks, fam." At first, I laughed. A dry, quiet kind of laugh. Surely this was a joke. But the license plate, my plate, was unmistakable. And 30 seconds later, the DMV app confirmed what my gut already knew. My car now belonged to Brandon Price, Savannah's boyfriend. I walked into our kitchen, heart thudding like it knew something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. "Where's the Range Rover?" I asked. My mother didn't even blink. "We sold it." I blinked. "We?" "It's family property," she said. "Don't be selfish." Selfish? That word hung in the air like a curse. They'd taken my silence for consent, my sacrifices for spare change, and now they'd taken the one thing I owned outright. The one thing with my name on it. Except they forgot something. I still had the receipts. 7 days later, Savannah walked into a courtroom, all designer confidence and borrowed charm. She didn't look up. Why would she? To her, I was still the girl in the corner. The sister with a stapler. The afterthought. That is, until the bailiff's voice rang out across the room like a reckoning. "All rise. The Honorable Judge Olivia Wren presiding." I had just stepped off the L, the spring air still clinging to its heat from earlier in the day, when my phone buzzed. A notification from Savannah's account popped up like a slap in the face. She rarely tagged me in anything. But there it was. A story of her sitting cross-legged on the glossy hood of a white Range Rover, sun-kissed and grinning, captioned, "First step to our Greece trip. Thanks, fam." At first, I just stared. My stomach tightened. That couldn't be my car. No way. I zoomed in, squinting as the train screeched away behind me. But the plate, my plate, peeked just enough from the lower corner. My chest clenched. I knew every scratch on that car. I had detailed it myself last month. I unlocked the DMV app on my phone, hands shaking as I typed in the VIN. It took 30 seconds to load, and with each one, the silence in my head stretched taut. Then the result hit me like cold water. Owner, Brandon Price. Brandon Price? I stood frozen on the sidewalk outside our block, the May heat suddenly too heavy to breathe in. Savannah's boyfriend? That smug, khaki-wearing finance bro with the fake Rolex and spray-tan jawline? He owned my car now? I walked home like I was underwater. Our 2-story house sat there quietly, blinds drawn, the lawn perfectly trimmed, like nothing ever happened inside. I walked in through the front and heard laughter from upstairs. Savannah, probably FaceTiming someone about her new ride. I found Mom in the kitchen stirring iced tea like we were just another peaceful family in suburbia. "Where's the Range Rover?" I asked, voice flat. She didn't look up. "Gone." I waited. "Gone where?" She sipped her tea and finally met my eyes. "We sold it." I blinked. "You sold it?" She set her glass down, wiping condensation from the counter like that was the problem here. "It's in your dad's name. It's family property." "No," I said, my voice cracking like thin ice. "It's in my name. I bought it with the scholarship grant. I paid for the insurance every year. Don't overdo it, Olivia," she said sharply, turning toward the fridge. "You're being selfish." Selfish. That word echoed in my ears like a bell rung too hard. My mom always had a way of folding guilt into compliments, passive judgment hidden behind practiced concern. But this wasn't just guilt-tripping me into cleaning up Savannah's dishes or babysitting her dog. This was theft. I stood there, frozen, the air suddenly thick with heat and betrayal. I could hear Savannah's laugh again from upstairs, soft and syrupy, like everything was perfect. Maybe for her, it was. I walked past Mom without another word, up to my room. The house felt foreign now, like I was inside someone else's life. Sitting on my bed, I opened my laptop and pulled up every piece of documentation I could find: emails from the scholarship committee, bank records of my transfer to the dealership, the insurance receipts with my name on them. But the title transfer had gone through Brandon. Brandon, who had no job, no credit history, no claim. Unless one of my parents had initiated the transfer. I went back to the DMV and pulled the title history again. There it was. Transferring party. Martin Wren. Dad. My heart sank a little lower. Of course he hadn't said a word. He'd never say anything. He'd nod along and let Mom decide, like he always did. Like when Savannah failed 2 classes and they blamed her professors. Like when I stayed home to help during COVID while Savannah vacationed in Cabo and they said I was too cautious. They never saw me. They only saw what I could give. And now even that was gone. But the final hit didn't come until I stared again at the new owner's name and whispered it aloud. Brandon Price? I said it louder as I went back downstairs. Brandon Price? He's Savannah's boyfriend. Mom turned her back to me and opened the oven door as if I'd said nothing. She didn't even flinch. Not one word. And just like that, I knew. This wasn't a mistake. They wanted me to find out this way. ChatGPT John Noy. In our house, fairness was a myth. And I was its longest believer. I used to think that if I did everything right, kept my head down, paid my dues, helped when I could, it would all balance out. That hard work eventually earned you something. But in this house, the scale was always tipped, and I just kept putting weights on the wrong side. Last summer, my friends invited me on a trip to Santorini. 1 week. Mid-August. The kind of trip that gets remembered in glowing Instagram stories and blurry Polaroids taped to dorm walls. I had the money. Sort of. Enough saved from tutoring and my side job at the university's library. But I said no. I've got loans, I told them. Graduation's coming up. I need to be smart. The same day I declined, Savannah bought a pair of Gucci slides. Mom posted a story about a well-deserved girls' day as they shopped along Michigan Avenue. No one offered to help me with my loans. And now Savannah was heading to Greece. On my car. With my money. With Brandon. Dinner that evening was as tense as ever. The kind of tension that wraps around your shoulders like a wet towel. We sat in the same seats we always did. Me across from Savannah, Mom at the head, Dad beside her. The roast chicken was dry and the green beans were overcooked, but no one said a word about the food. They were too busy talking about plans. Savannah was glowing. We'll land in Athens and take a ferry to Santorini, she said, swiping through her itinerary on her phone. Brandon booked a private villa, infinity pool. Can you believe it? I chewed slowly. With what money? Savannah looked up and smiled. Brandon's been saving for months. He started a travel fund. I set my fork down. Where did that fund come from? A silence dropped like a lead weight. Janice kept sipping her water, not meeting my eyes. Savannah blinked, then suddenly became very interested in cutting her chicken. No one answered. I leaned forward slightly. Did it come from the sale of my car? Mom's tone was ice. Olivia, don't be petty. Petty? I laughed softly. You sold my car, behind my back. You're always making things difficult, she said, waving her hand like she was shooing a fly. Savannah deserves this. She's been through a lot. I blinked. Been through a lot? She got a tattoo and failed econ. She had to retake that class during spring break, Dad added, finally chiming in. I turned to him. And I stayed up all night helping her study. Remember that? He avoided my gaze. His fork clinked against his plate as he rearranged food he wasn't eating. Mom set her napkin down like she was about to deliver a speech. You never learned how to give in, Olivia. You always push back. I stared at her, confused. Give in to what? To being invisible? You think the world owes you something, she snapped. I exhaled. Number, I just thought you might see me. Savannah suddenly smiled again, oblivious or pretending to be. Anyway, she chirped, we'll be posting everything on the travel blog. Brandon says it might help us get a brand deal. I clenched my hands under the table. Must be nice to have someone invest in your life. Martin looked up sharply then. You'll have another chance. This is your brother's time. My head tilted, heartbeat pausing. My brother? He flushed slightly, mouth working. Brandon is practically family. There it was. That was it. The line. The declaration. The final transfer of allegiance. I sat very still, the chicken on my plate untouched, my mouth dry as paper. I looked at them, one by one, the family I had poured everything into. My time, my money, my silence. Then I whispered, and that's how you're going to teach me gratitude? That night I made my first rule. I'd never let them use me again. It was around 10:20 p.m. when I slipped out of the house. I didn't slam the door, just closed it firmly behind me, the way you seal something shut so it can't leak out and stain what comes next. I walked 2 blocks before pulling out my phone to call Chloe Monroe. She picked up on the second ring. Olivia? I need to talk to you, I said, voice steady even though my pulse was racing. About something legal, it's family. A pause. Then, I'm home. Come over. Chloe and I weren't close friends, not really. We'd taken contract law together during our sophomore year, bonded briefly over shared caffeine addictions, and exchanged notes. But she'd always struck me as sharp, unapologetic. The kind of woman who could slice through red tape with a nail file if she had to. Her apartment still smelled like peppermint and printer ink. You want tea? She asked, already heading toward the kitchen. No thanks, I said. I'll get right to it. I told her everything. The car, the Instagram post, my mom brushing me off like I was the problem. She froze. Wait, the car? Was it in your name? I pulled the folder from my tote bag. Inside, the original registration. My name. No cosigners. I bought it with part of the scholarship stipend I earned sophomore year. Chloe's eyes narrowed. And your parents? Sold it? Without a power of attorney? I nodded. That's illegal, she said flatly. I thought maybe I was overreacting. She gave me a sharp look. Number, you're reacting exactly right. I exhaled, the knot in my chest loosening just a bit. It felt good to hear that. To have someone, not family, validate the betrayal. Chloe grabbed her laptop and slid it open. Let's check DMV records. If they did a transfer, there should be a transaction log. Do you know when it was sold? I hesitated. Savannah's post went up Tuesday afternoon. Chloe's fingers flew across the keyboard. I watched the reflection of the screen in her glasses, glowing blue like a secret she was about to unearth. Here, she muttered. Transfer from Martin Wren to Brandon Price. Dated Monday morning. That's before you even knew. My stomach dropped. So they did it behind my back. On paper. Worse, Chloe said. It's fraud. If the car was in your name, your dad couldn't have legally transferred it without either forging your signature or misrepresenting ownership. I stared at the screen. There it was. Black and white. My own father's signature on a document that stripped me of what I'd worked for. She leaned back. Olivia, if you want, we can sue them. I blinked. Sue my own parents. Sue Savannah's boyfriend. Sue the very people who gave me life, and then decided it was theirs to shape, own, and repurpose at will. The idea didn't frighten me. It steadied me. Because maybe, for once, I wouldn't be the emergency wallet. Or the quiet daughter who took it all in and said nothing. I reached into my pocket and opened the voice memo app on my phone. From now on, I would record every word. I'm your daughter, not your donor. But they never saw the difference. The words slipped from my lips in the dark, too quiet for anyone to hear, but loud enough to echo off the walls of my bedroom. I was sitting cross-legged on the floor, papers spread around me like fallen feathers, bank statements, receipts, handwritten notes, emails, the detritus of a financial life that was no longer mine alone. A spreadsheet glowed faintly from my laptop screen. I'd been compiling it for an hour, cross-referencing every transfer, every Venmo, every just this once payment I'd made in the last 5 years. What began as a rough guess had crystallized into an exact number: $38,412.76. That was what I had given them. For groceries, overdue bills, late mortgage payments. For Savannah's textbooks when she dropped out halfway through the semester and sold them on Facebook Marketplace. For Dad's dental surgery. For Mom's credit card debt. For the house, which they all loved to remind me would someday be mine too. But it never felt like mine. I found the email that started it all. 5 years ago. From Mom. The subject line, private. Just this once. Olivia, I know you're responsible. I trust you won't let this house go. Your father's trying his best, but it's been a hard year. Don't tell Savannah. She wouldn't understand. Just $1,200 to cover the mortgage interest. Just this once. Just this once. Except, it was never just once. I scrolled through the transfers again. Each time I sent money, they said thank you like it was a gift. But it wasn't a gift. It was survival. For them. For a home I didn't even feel welcome in anymore. I remembered one evening when Dad called me while I was still at college. I had a midterm the next day. He didn't ask how I was. Just jumped in. Liv, listen, he said. Your grandma lost her job. The interest payment's due on Friday. Could you help out? Just this once. I said yes. Of course I said yes. Back then, I thought that's what love looked like. But love shouldn't bankrupt you. I reached for a receipt I'd shoved into the side pocket of my filing box. A transfer to Wren Household Utilities, dated last month. It was for $318.50. Power and water. 3 nights ago, when I asked Mom who paid the utility bill, she shrugged. I don't know. Maybe your father. Or Savannah. She knew I had paid it. She just didn't want to admit it. The paper in my hand crinkled from how tightly I gripped it. I looked around the room, my sanctuary, my one unshared space, and realized how small it truly was, not in size, but in freedom. I had been giving and giving, tethered to people who never saw me, only what I could provide. It was 1:47 a.m. when I picked up my phone. Miles Carter answered on the second ring, his voice groggy but alert. Olivia? Sorry it's late, I said quickly. I need to ask you something. Legal. He paused. What kind of legal? If I want to be completely separate from them. Legally. Financially. Everything. What do I have to do? I asked. The line was quiet for a moment. Then he said slowly, You serious? Yes. He exhaled. Okay. Then we start by freezing all shared accounts and making a clean paper trail. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I wasn't just done being the donor. I was done being theirs. Brandon's arrogance became my opportunity. It started with a text Chloe sent from her burner number. Just 6 words. Perfectly casual. just vague enough to bait him. Long time no see. Heard you're getting married? We were sitting in the corner of Magnolia and Main, a coffee shop tucked between a vintage bookstore and a candle boutique that always smelled like cinnamon bark. Chloe had her laptop open, sunglasses resting atop her head like a crown, typing with the relaxed flair of someone who'd done this before. She smirked as the three dots appeared. He's going to bite. I stirred my tea without looking up. He's always hungry for attention. A second later, his reply pinged in. Not yet, but you know, the first gift is a Range Rover. Chloe turned her screen so I could read it myself. There it was. Brandon Price. Too smug for his own good, bragging about the car he'd stolen through legal sleight of hand and familial betrayal. I stared at the words for a moment before quietly reaching for the printer app on my phone. Send it to your email, Chloe said. Don't leave it only on devices. Back it up. I nodded, already forwarding it to a private folder I'd created the night before. I'd labeled it Exhibits, not because it was cute or clever, but because I wanted every piece of evidence I collected to feel like part of a trial. Because in a way, it was. Savannah, ever oblivious, posted that same morning on Instagram. A glittery photo with pastel overlays of her and Brandon standing in front of a packed suitcase, her caption written in the loopy font she used for everything, Countdown to Greece. We did it, babe. The irony practically burned. She has no idea, I murmured, scrolling through the comments, most of them heart emojis and OMG Queen nonsense. Chloe sipped her coffee. She'll find out when a subpoena shows up. I didn't smile. Instead, I flipped open my notebook and started sketching out the timeline. The registration date, Brandon's email confession, the sale records Chloe pulled from the DMV, Savannah's public posts. It was all starting to form a map, one that pointed clearly to intent, not coincidence. Chloe tapped her screen again. Look at this, she said, pulling up a public records database she subscribed to. Your boy Brandon's been busy. 2 separate property disputes. One in Indiana, another in Arizona. Both settled out of court. I leaned in. For what? Fraud and breach of verbal contract. He convinced 2 different women to co-sign leases for him, then bounced. I looked at her. Why am I not surprised? He's slick, she said, and people like that dig their own graves with their words. I opened the folder labeled Voice Notes on my phone. Every conversation I'd had with my parents in the past 2 weeks. Recorded. Labeled by date and topic. I wasn't naive anymore. Every sigh, every guilt trip, every denial, saved. Because I knew how they'd spin things once this came to light. I pulled out the manila envelope Chloe had given me earlier that week. Inside were printouts, legal memos, even an affidavit template. I whispered, barely audible even to myself, we'll see who really gets the vacation of a lifetime. Because I was done watching them board flights paid for with my silence. Now I was the one booking one-way tickets. And I had receipts. There it was. A single transaction, tucked in between utilities. $4,000 wired to Brandon's name. The line blurred as I stared at the statement. Electricity, gas, water. Then, ACH transfer. Brandon Price, $4,000. Sandwiched so neatly between everyday expenses that no one without reason would ever catch it. But I had reason. And I had been trained, by betrayal, to notice patterns hidden in plain sight. The bank was quiet. Like most places are at 4 in the afternoon when the lunch crowd has gone and the post-work rush hasn't arrived. I sat across from a young teller who kept glancing at the glass office in the back, where the branch manager occasionally looked up from her screen, tracking us. Thank you for printing this, I said softly, tapping the stack of sheets. No problem, she replied, offering the kind of practiced smile that came with too many hours behind a bulletproof window. Was there a specific discrepancy you're reviewing? Yes, I said. Internal audit for legal review. I was advised to request the past 18 months, itemized. Miles Carter had explained everything the night before. As a partial account holder, even if just historically, you have a right to request statements, especially if your funds were commingled. Be specific. Use phrases like audit, authorized transactions, and account liability. It'll trigger protocol without raising red flags. I did exactly that. What I hadn't expected was to find my money in the hands of someone like Brandon. I opened my email and clicked on the attachment I'd pulled from a dusty folder, one that should have been deleted long ago. A note from my mother, dated last spring. Liv, I moved the remaining balance from your freshman scholarship fund into the family joint account. Just for safekeeping. We can talk about allocation later. I never responded. Back then, I was drowning in finals and part-time work. I let it slide, trusted that safekeeping didn't mean redistribution. Now, I knew better. I thumbed through more transactions. Payments to home maintenance vendors I'd never heard of. A $600 florist charge for Savannah's graduation dinner. The one I wasn't invited to. A spa service billed 3 times to a place in Lincoln Park. And then, the wire to Brandon. Clean. Unapologetic. Miles was waiting on a bench just outside, sipping iced coffee like he had all the time in the world. When I stepped out, he stood and immediately noticed the look on my face. What did you find? I handed him the top sheet. He scanned it, jaw tightening. This wire. Do you have the timestamp? June 12th, 2 days after Mom said she didn't know how the car insurance was covered. He gave a low whistle. That's bold. I opened the email on my phone and showed him the line about the scholarship fund. His eyes moved quickly over the screen. That's even bolder. We walked in silence for a few moments, passing boutique windows and quiet cafes. I didn't want to speak first. I wanted to hear what someone like Miles, who'd been through it, who knew what severing meant, would say. Finally, he looked at me. If this goes to court, they will not only lose money, but also their reputation. I nodded. That last part wasn't a threat. It was a forecast. And storms were coming. You're invited, Savannah chirped, waving the blue and gold wedding invitation in my face. It was embossed with foil, her name dancing beside Brandon's in an elegant serif font. I blinked, confused for a moment, thinking she had me mistaken for someone else. But no. Her bright, curated smile was definitely aimed at me. I hadn't seen her in 3 weeks. Not since the day I stopped coming home after discovering the wire transfer. Not since I asked Miles what it would take to legally separate myself from my own bloodline. I was at DeLaurent's bakery, ordering a small lemon tart and pretending to browse the espresso blends when she appeared behind me like a perfume ad come to life. Soft curls, pastel dress, and that tone-deaf, pageant-ready voice. The whole family misses you, she said, placing one manicured hand on her chest like she meant it. Brandon misses you too. I didn't flinch, just nodded and stepped aside to let the barista pass. She glanced around the bakery, clearly hoping for an audience, before pulling the invitation from her tote and slipping it into my hand like a secret. I hope you come, because Mom booked the place herself. You'll love it. I held the card by its edges as though it might burn me. You booked the Ariston? I asked quietly. Her smile twitched. Of course. It's the most elegant venue we could afford and, well, it wouldn't be right if our successful businesswoman of a sister wasn't there. You're part of this family, Liv. We want you there. There it was. She didn't want me. She wanted the image of me, polished, polite. The girl who once made Dean's List 4 years in a row and got her name printed in Young Innovators Monthly. The Olivia who would lend credibility to a table full of financial half-truths and influencer delusions. I slid the card into my bag without a word and turned back to the pastry counter. Outside, I called Chloe. Guess who just handed me a wedding invitation at a bakery like it was a Starbucks coupon? She laughed, low and sharp. Let me guess. She used your full name and said something like, "It wouldn't be the same without you?" Close, I muttered, glancing at the glossy paper again. She said Mom booked the venue. Oh, now it's a family affair, Chloe mused. You going? I'm thinking about it. There was a pause. Then, her voice turned wry. The stage doesn't need dialogue to make a curtain call. That made me smile. Just a little. After we hung up, I found a quiet bench across from the bakery. The street was calm, a few couples wandering by with iced drinks and paper shopping bags. I stared at the invitation for a full minute before pulling out my phone. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I hadn't messaged him in over a year, not since the day we agreed it was better if we never blurred our friendship with our past again. But this wasn't about nostalgia. This was about leverage, about knowing who I could trust to stand beside me when the curtain did fall. I tapped out the message. You still owe me a favor. Saturday night? And hit send. Do you think they'd still smile if they knew who paid for the champagne? I whispered it to Isaac as we stood by the glass balcony, looking down at the shimmering lights of downtown Chicago. The rooftop restaurant pulsed with curated joy. String lights, clinking glasses, floral arrangements that probably cost more than my first college semester. But all I could hear was the sound of Savannah's voice rising above the music, introducing herself and her fiancé to guests like a pageant MC. They don't have a clue, Isaac murmured, lifting his camera slightly and snapping a photo. But keep talking like that, and I'll have to quote you. I gave him a half smile. Make sure you spell my name right when the article drops. He chuckled, already reviewing footage on his phone. He blended in easily, ex-boyfriend or not. With his dark jeans, blazer, and press credentials discreetly tucked inside his pocket, he looked like just another friend of the groom. No one questioned his presence. That's the beauty of invisibility by design. Savannah spotted me and beelined toward us, her heels clicking with self-importance. Liv, you made it, she squealed, arms outstretched like we hadn't spoken in years. I let her hug me. That was the game, wasn't it? Optics, unity, sisterhood. She pulled back and looped her arm through mine, steering me toward a small circle of women in satin cocktail dresses. Everyone, this is my sister Olivia. She's a financial expert. Does legal stuff, smart money things. I smiled thinly. Mostly I clean up other people's messes. They laughed, not quite understanding the double meaning. Brandon appeared beside her, champagne glass in hand. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Olivia, he said, like he'd tasted something sour. Brandon, I replied. He didn't offer his hand, neither did I. Across the rooftop, Chloe's livestream was already rolling, disguised under a trending account that specialized in luxury and law. She whispered sharp observations through a wireless mic. Notice the third-party vendor license for the venue, cross-referencing with known shell accounts. Stay tuned, viewers. I watched Savannah work the room with practiced ease. She had always known how to make people like her. But tonight, I had something better than charm. I had evidence, and I had the stage. I stepped forward when the cake was wheeled out. Before anyone could raise a toast, I handed Savannah a small gift box, delicate, ivory, tied with blue ribbon. Her eyes sparkled as she opened it, then blinked, then frowned. Inside, a folded note. She read it silently, lips parting. Debt paid in full, emotionally. The crowd went quiet. She looked up, confusion melting into something colder. I met her eyes. You always wanted a clean slate. Before she could respond, Brandon's phone buzzed. He checked it. Then his face changed. Excuse me, he said tightly, stepping back toward the shadows near the wine bar. But I followed. I didn't need to say a word. The glow from his screen said everything. From Miles Carter, Esquire subject, formal notification of investigation details, pending review of tax documentation, offshore transfers, and potential misappropriation of scholarship-related funds. He looked at me like a man realizing the room had no doors. "You think you're winning?" he hissed, jaw clenched, veins taut. I leaned in, voice level. "I'm not playing your game anymore, Brandon." He didn't respond. Because he couldn't. ChatGPT John Noy. The next morning, my bank account was frozen. So was my father's voice when I showed him why. I'd only intended to transfer a small amount, just enough to cover Chloe's reimbursement for printing legal binders, but the screen blinked red. Transaction declined. Contact your financial institution. My stomach sank. I logged into my account. A banner flashed across the top. Account temporarily disabled due to pending dispute. I sat back slowly, heart tight in my chest. Miles answered on the second ring. "You got the freeze?" "Yes." "I just got an alert too. Martin Wren filed a dispute under the grounds of suspected fraud." I almost laughed. "He's claiming fraud? With what proof?" "He doesn't need proof, just a signed complaint. We'll challenge it, but in the meantime, I need everything. All of it, Olivia." By noon, I was at Miles's office with 2 folders and 1 USB. The folders held screenshots of texts, deposit records, digital authorizations bearing Martin's and Janice's names. The USB had audio clips of conversations where they all but begged me for help. Always, just this once. Miles scanned the documents with an intensity I rarely saw outside cross-examinations. "This," he said, tapping one of Janice's old emails, "is the kind of negligence courts hate." She uses phrases like, "Just move it to Brandon's card, he'll sort it out later," with no paper trail. "Exactly," I said. "And they're using that lack of trail to say I acted alone." Miles nodded grimly. "I'll add this to the case file. But you need to know. This is war now." I already knew. I stopped by the Wren house later that day. The backyard still looked like the photos from Savannah's childhood birthday parties. Twinkle lights along the fence, flower pots in symmetrical rows. Except this time, no one smiled when I walked in. Martin was sitting under the gazebo, sipping something amber-colored. He didn't look up when I approached. Didn't speak. Janice stepped out from the kitchen and nearly dropped her mug. "You're not welcome here right now," she said quietly. I kept my tone even. "I'm aware, but I wanted to say this in person." She clutched the edge of the porch railing. "If you're here to intimidate, I'm here to clarify." I looked at Martin. "You want to take me to court? Good. Let's go." He blinked at me. Something in his jaw twitched, but he still didn't speak. Janice let out a breath that sounded half like a whimper. "You're our daughter." "No," I said, holding her gaze. "I was your resource, your backup plan, your sacrifice." And I walked away. Back at Miles's office, I pulled one last item from my bag, a second USB, marked with blue tape. "This one," I said, sliding it across the desk, "contains the conversation where they asked me to help without paperwork." Miles plugged it in. His eyes darkened as the first recording played. In it, Janice's voice was unmistakable. "If it's in your name, honey, it's cleaner that way. We'll reimburse you later. Family to family." I didn't wait for the clip to finish. "I'm ready," I said. Miles nodded slowly. "Then let's file." I didn't just have receipts. I had their entire history, and they forgot I knew where the bodies were buried. The conference room smelled like lemon polish and anticipation. My fingers rested on the edge of the table, calm and deliberate, while 2 of the most expensive attorneys in Cook County shuffled papers across from me. Janice and Martin sat at the far end, shoulders tense. Brandon leaned back like he owned the oxygen. They were all here. And I wasn't afraid anymore. Ms. Wren, the mediator began. Before we open formal discussion, is there anything you wish to present for preliminary review? I slid the black USB drive across the glass surface toward Miles. He nodded. This contains 6 years of financial history, transfers, bills, tuition receipts, mortgage coverage, plus all transactions linked directly to Mr. Brandon Price. One of the family lawyers raised an eyebrow. What relevance does this have to the disputed Range Rover and the account freeze? Miles opened the folder in front of him. A lot, actually, because what we're contesting is a pattern, not just a car. A consistent, coordinated misappropriation of funds belonging to my client. The opposing side bristled. I clicked my pen but said nothing. The mediator gestured. Proceed. A flat screen lit up. Miles walked through the first slide. A 2019 tuition payment for Savannah, made from my scholarship-linked account. Olivia had no academic obligation to cover this, Miles said. Yet she did, upon request from her parents, without repayment. Click. A 2021 utility bill for the Wren household, listed under Olivia's bank routing number. Click. A 2023 email from Janice. Don't worry, honey, we'll adjust it later. For now, just put it on your card. Martin glanced at her, startled. Miles looked at the table. We also have records of the Range Rover sale, signed, not by Olivia, but by Brandon Price. I watched Brandon shift in his seat. His smirk started to crack. We verified the signature with a forensic document examiner. It's a forgery. Janice opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Then the audio played. Brandon's voice filled the room. I'll take the money out of Olivia's account before she realizes. She won't fight back. She's too loyal. There was silence. Then a sharp shuffle of paper. One of the attorneys whispered something to Brandon, who shot to his feet. She doesn't know how to handle money, he snapped. We did it because she's unstable. She hoards guilt like it's cash. She wouldn't even be in this room if I hadn't helped her grow up. Martin looked pale. I didn't flinch. Miles leaned forward. Let the record show Mr. Price just admitted to unauthorized withdrawals and emotional manipulation. The mediator lifted her gavel slightly. Given the new evidence, this will escalate beyond informal mediation. I could feel my heart thudding, not from fear, but from something cleaner, firmer, like resolve. The court official cleared her throat. The next session will be a public hearing. I smiled. Finally, there's light. Olivia Wren, please take the stand. And just like that, the room fell silent. I stepped forward, each footfall echoing louder than it should have. The wood beneath me felt harder than concrete. I glanced up, dozens of eyes watching. Janice's posture rigid, Martin pale like a dimmed ghost, Brandon pretending not to blink. And Isaac, quiet, steady, notebook balanced on his knee. The oath was a whisper. I swore to tell the truth, and for the first time in my family's story, that promise would matter. Ms. Wren, the judge began, please walk the court through the events regarding the disputed assets. I exhaled. Over 6 years, I contributed over $38,000 to the Wren household, tuition, mortgage, utility bills, all under the agreement that these were temporary familial arrangements. None of it was returned. My voice was clear, not shaking, not angry, just deliberate. Regarding the Range Rover, I continued, the vehicle was purchased using scholarship funds awarded to me in college. The registration was under my name. Yet, I was unaware of its sale until a social media post revealed that it was given as a gift to Mr. Brandon Price. The opposing counsel stirred. The judge gestured for silence. I pulled a sheet from the folder. This is a transfer form filed at the DMV, showing a change in ownership to Brandon Price, dated May 3, 2024. My signature appears here. Miles leaned in. We have reason to believe this signature was forged, the courtroom murmured. But the most telling part, I added, turning to the next exhibit, is this handwritten note, addressed to Brandon by his mother, Margaret Price. I lifted the paper. Don't tell anyone about the car. I'll take care of it. Mom. Brandon shifted in his seat. Ms. Wren, the judge said, what is the relationship between this note and the car? I believe Brandon coordinated with Janice and Martin to transfer assets under false pretenses, using family accounts and my scholarship savings. This note confirms collusion to conceal that transaction. Gasps. One of the attorneys reached for a water bottle and missed. I handed over a printed transcript. This is a recorded conversation between Brandon and my mother, Janice Wren. He admits using my funds to expedite the Greece trip and assures her that he's handling Olivia. I didn't need to explain what that meant. Brandon's attorney leaned over, whispering. Brandon frowned, snapped. It's all taken out of context. Mr. Price, the judge interrupted. Please remain seated unless instructed otherwise. The court clerk passed around another document. I kept going. My father, Martin Wren, co-signed multiple transfers, except this one. I held up another document. The signature here doesn't match any other on file. According to handwriting analysis, it was altered post-submission. Martin stiffened. I don't remember that form. His voice cracked. For once, he looked directly at me, but I didn't offer anything back. The judge sat back, silent for a moment. Given the evidence presented and the indication of possible criminal activity, this hearing is adjourned. The defendants may seek new legal representation. A full trial may be necessary. The gavel dropped. I gathered my things quietly. Brandon looked like he wanted to shout, but his lawyers were already in a huddle. Janice wouldn't meet my eyes. Martin sat slumped, defeated. I walked down the aisle, Isaac standing near the exit. His tie was slightly askew, eyes alight. He handed me a folded paper. My article, due tomorrow morning. The headline read, "He scammed her with her family's help." The words stared back at me from Isaac's article, crisp against the soft glow of my laptop screen. The byline carried his name, but the story? It was mine. My voice in someone else's tone. My life, rewritten in black and white, no longer bound to whispers or private wounds. A steaming cup of coffee sat untouched beside me. Chloe's texts had come in rapid fire. Page 1, trending. Everywhere. Check Twitter. You're not invisible anymore. I scrolled. The article unraveled like a quiet war cry, each paragraph sharper than the last. Isaac had laid it all out. The car sold behind my back, the forged signature, the transferred funds, the cold complicity of Janice and Martin Wren. Every receipt, every email, every voice recording was methodically footnoted. Even Brandon's offhand quote, "She's too loyal to fight back." Now the world knew what I had carried in silence for years, notifications stacked like bricks, at Just Genspod. This is why women don't trust family-first narratives. Legal Lucy. Fraud, manipulation, and forgery. Brandon Price might be the next Bernie Madoff, but make it domestic. Justice for Olivia trended by noon. My phone buzzed again. Chloe this time. 2 more women, Chicago and Austin. Brandon used them for loans and ghosted. I stared at the message, then glanced back at the headline. He didn't just scam me, he had a pattern, and I'd accidentally ignited the thread that would unravel it. A knock. I opened the door to find Isaac standing there, holding 2 coffees and a folded newspaper. The print version. "Want a souvenir?" he asked. "I already framed your headline in my mind." He gave a tired smile, setting the cups down. Some of Brandon's old college classmates are emailing me. A few saw him bragging about funding trips on sweet little connections. One even has a voice memo. I shook my head slowly. Unreal. He thought he'd never be caught. Especially not by you. My phone buzzed again. A message from an unsaved number. Janice. You're tearing this family apart over a car? I handed Isaac the phone without saying anything. He read it, then met my eyes. They still think this is about the car. I nodded. They think the explosion started with a match. They forget the room was already filled with gas. Later that day, Chloe called. She sounded wired. We've got a foundation. I'm forming a group. Victims of financial abuse. You'd be the perfect first speaker, Olivia. I exhaled. Maybe. After court. At 4:23 p.m., Miles sent me a single-line email. State v. Brandon Price is officially criminal. The document attached named Brandon as the primary defendant. For identity fraud, misappropriation of funds, and forgery. Janice Wren was listed below, under complicity in financial misconduct under domestic trust. I sat at the window that evening, watching streetlights flicker on. Somewhere below, people lived unaware that families could break this way, that sometimes the people who raise you also rob you, quietly, consistently, under the banner of love. Miles called just as the sun dipped beneath the buildings. They're going down, he said. But when they fall, are you going to reach out and pick them up? They always feared embarrassment more than consequences. And now, they had both. Cameras flickered. Microphones tilted. I adjusted the sleeves of my blazer, the press conference room in Miles's law office charged with a sharp, expectant silence. My voice echoed steady as I looked past the rows of journalists, past the flashing lights, straight into the space where truth had long been silenced. My name is Olivia Wren. I am here not because I enjoy attention, but because silence was never protection. It was permission. And I won't give it anymore. Chloe nodded from the side, lips pressed into something between grief and pride. Miles stood just behind the podium, arms crossed, eyes scanning the room for volatility. Isaac lingered near the edge of the crowd, recorder in hand, notebook half filled, his jaw tense. I'm not here to ask for my money back, I said. I'm asking for the truth. Murmurs swept the press like a wind through dry leaves. The aftermath of the hearing had rolled like thunder. News outlets published timelines, exposés, and taped interviews of women coming forward. Brandon's corporate partnerships crumbled overnight. 3 more women had stepped out with receipts of emergency loans and romantic coercion, each naming him as their future fiancé, none knowing the others existed. Brandon was in custody. No bail. Janice had been served a legal injunction, banned from accessing any accounts tied to Olivia's educational fund or the house mortgage, the same fund she once called family insurance. Savannah vanished from every social platform, her Instagram wiped, Facebook deactivated. Chloe suspected a rebranding attempt. As for Martin, he delivered a sealed envelope to Miles's office. No lawyer, no publicist, just shaky handwriting on the front. For Olivia. I'm sorry. I hadn't opened it. At the old Wren house, now a tabloid icon, reporters crowded the front gate. A sign hung awkwardly from the porch. No comment. Please leave. The same gate I used to walk through, wondering if I was wanted inside. Now the world wanted in, and they couldn't stop it. Chloe had taken on a new title, Media Representative for Survivors of Domestic Financial Abuse. Her face was calm on the morning shows. Her voice didn't shake like mine once did. She looked at the cameras the way I used to look at my family, curious whether they would blink first. I took questions for half an hour. No, I haven't spoken to my sister. No, I did not press criminal charges. Those were filed independently by the state. Yes, my legal team is cooperating with all investigations. And finally, why did I wait? I paused. Because I was taught that family comes first, but not when family means you come last. The press applauded. Later, back in Miles's office, I stared out the window while he poured himself a neat splash of scotch. They underestimated you, he said. No, I replied. They counted on me staying the same. He chuckled. Well, they're getting the bill now. He tapped the schedule open on his tablet. His eyes narrowed at the screen, then he grinned. We have one last session, the verdict. For the first time in years, I slept without earplugs. Or fear. The morning light slid across my bare hardwood floor, warm and undemanding. My new apartment on the Chicago waterfront was modest, bright, and, most importantly, mine. No knocks on the door, no raised voices bleeding through walls, no guilt from silence. I left the windows open now, sometimes even the door unlocked for a moment while I stepped out to water the little basil plant Isaac gave me. It was the smallest kind of freedom, but it wrapped around my lungs like breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Chloe arrived just before noon, tote bags stuffed with papers, a laptop, and 2 lattes. She kicked off her shoes like she'd done it 100 times before. Elder Fund's first week, she said, handing me the coffee. And we're already behind. That's how you know it's real, I said, smiling. We had launched the foundation quietly, no press, no grand opening. Just a simple website and a mission. Direct aid for victims of domestic financial abuse, especially elderly women who were often left to figure it out when families failed them. Chloe organized pro bono legal consultations, and I took calls. Sometimes I listened more than I spoke. I've got a woman named Ms. Bailey, Chloe said. 72, lives off pension. Her son took a credit card in her name. Bring her in, I said. She'll leave with options. By the afternoon, the office was full of papers, tea, quiet stories, and one fierce sense of purpose. It wasn't about revenge. It was about restoring what had been quietly taken: autonomy, clarity, peace. Isaac stopped by late that day, manuscript pages in hand. He'd changed the working title of his article series. The Daughter Clause, he said. Think of it like a constitutional edition, a protection for women like you who gave too much and asked too little. I'm not sure people will read it. They already are. They just don't know it's about them yet. We sat in silence for a while. The good kind. I never asked. Do you regret it? I finally asked. Publishing. Making it public. He leaned forward. I regret that you had to live it, but I don't regret showing the world that you did. That night, I went to therapy. The room was pale green, the couch soft. My therapist asked me about my silence. It's the first time I don't hate it, I said. It doesn't feel like drowning anymore, just quiet. Unhaunted, she offered. I nodded. We didn't talk about Janice, or Savannah, or the house. Some things didn't need revisiting, not yet. When I returned home, the voicemail icon blinked. Martin's voice crackled through the phone. No emotion, just clipped sentences. I know it's late, Olivia, but I need to talk. Privately. One conversation. Just you and me. I stared at the phone for a long time, then tapped to save the message. The next morning, I dialed Miles. Can you be free Tuesday? 4? My father wants to meet, I said. I'll come, but this time, I'll bring my lawyer. They asked if I forgave them. I said I didn't need to. I just moved past them. Courtrooms feel colder on sentencing day, not because of the marble floors or the polished wood, but because this is when truth finally becomes weight, and everyone can hear it land. Brandon sat stone-faced, his tie loose, his future tighter than ever. 6 months probation, mandatory restitution, a permanent record. He didn't look at me once. Janice stood beside her lawyer, chin lifted just slightly. The judge read her sentence: 2 years under financial supervision, including quarterly audits. She swallowed hard when it was over. Not because of guilt, I imagined, but because she'd finally been told no. Martin, in the back, didn't speak. But the papers had already run the story of his resignation from the church council. Apparently, even grace had its boundaries. I left without speaking to any of them. Chloe met me on the courthouse steps with a coat and a quiet nod. Miles gave me a look that said, "This is the part where you exhale." But I didn't. Not yet. That evening, I stood behind a podium at my old high school, in front of a sea of young women wearing wide eyes and hopeful faces. The banner above read, "Empowered Women Rising." "I was told once that without family, you are nothing," I began, fingers resting lightly on the edges of the lectern. But that's not true. I stood alone, and still stood tall. A murmur of agreement rippled across the room. I told them about money, about lies, about power disguised as protection. I didn't give names, but the story was mine, and that was enough. Justice, I said, is not just about punishment. It's about telling your story, out loud, and refusing to whisper again. I paused, just briefly, then smiled, and for the first time, I'd like to thank someone, me, for not giving up. They clapped. Chloe cried. Isaac stood in the back, recording it all. Later, I went to the Wren house. Alone. No boxes, no bags. Just one key in my hand, and the memory of what I had survived. I walked through the hallway, fingers brushing against the framed photos they'd never removed. My old room was empty. The walls were still that pale blue I had once hated. Funny how time makes even color feel dishonest. At the front door, I took one last look. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I closed it slowly, with both hands, and I never looked back. That night, curled up on my couch, tea in hand, I checked my email out of habit. There it was. Subject line glowing like a promise, from TEDx Yale. Subject: We'd like to invite you to give a talk on your journey. Some battles aren't fought with fists, but with facts, patience, and unwavering clarity. Olivia didn't just reclaim what was hers. She dismantled the illusion of loyalty that had hidden injustice for years. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. Like, share, and subscribe if this story struck a chord with you. And comment 1 if you felt seen, or 2 if something still feels unresolved.